we spend so much time, thinking about living right. But the one thing that we all know is coming is, well, not living.
Yeah.
Seneca had this really poetic way of putting it. He said, "Death is the birth of eternity," which I guess is one way to look at it. But what if we could like maybe just put off that whole eternity thing for a while? Maybe even like indefinitely.
Right.
That's what we're diving into today.
All right.
The wild idea of artificial immortality.
And what I think is so interesting about this is that it goes way beyond, just like the philosophy of wanting to live forever. I mean, we've got a bunch of different stuff here. Personal stories about legacy. We have some pretty out there scientific ideas, people arguing about consciousness, and even like little peeks at technology that might actually make this happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just some like far out thought experiment anymore.
Right.
In this deep dive, we're going to really explore this whole concept of artificial immortality. For if you unpack all the hopes and the hype and the real science behind it and like ultimately what it could mean for what it means to be human, Yeah.
And because we know you like to get right to the good stuff, learn things quickly and thoroughly and, have those aha moments.
Yeah.
Without getting bogged down in details, let's jump in.
Okay, let's do it. I mean, let's start with this whole wanting to live forever thing, right? It's like a current that runs through so much of human history, and it's definitely something our sources touch on.
Yeah.
Seneca's take is like an acceptance thing, right? Like death isn't the end. It's a transition, but then you have transhumanists who come at it from a completely different angle.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
think about someone like Lincoln Cannon, whose work we've been looking at for him. It's not even just wanting to avoid death. It's like this ethical duty to use technology to overcome what he sees as like a basic human limitation.
Yeah.
He actually says the goal is to make death optional.
Wow.
That's pretty huge, right? To think we could choose to keep on living. And I think what's important to remember about Cannon's argument is that it's not just a desire to avoid death, right? It's this ethical imperative to use technology to overcome this fundamental human limitation. And it's about opening up possibilities for learning and contribution.
Yeah.
And when you connect that to the whole idea of transhumanism, which is, using reason and tech to improve the human condition, extending lifespan indefinitely, is for a lot of people a key part of that improvement.
Then you have the Tarasum religion and Gabriel Rothblatt, also known as Swamiji.
Okay.
Their approach is really interesting because it's not even about biology. They believe our consciousness, our soul, isn't some mysterious thing, but it's information data
Right.
that can be captured and like maybe even transferred.
It's a really different way of thinking about it, isn't it? Like the traditional view of a soul is this immaterial thing that leaves the body. But Tarasum is saying, no, our essence, our thoughts, memories, personality, it's all data.
Yeah.
So if that's true, if consciousness is just information, what does that even mean for how we think about life and death?
Which brings us to mind files, these digital archives that hold all that data, everything that makes you you.
Right.
And Swamiji makes a pretty interesting point because he says we're already kind of building mind files without even realizing it.
Really?
Through all the tech companies we use all the time, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Google, all that data we generate every day.
But is it really that simple, though?
Mhm.
Can you just reduce our complex consciousness to data? What are we missing in that equation? Things like our physical experiences, the depth of emotion. Can you really capture all that in code?
It really does make you think about how much data we're putting out there about ourselves, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we've got this desire to not die, a movement that's trying to make that happen, a belief that our consciousness is data, but what's really happening right now.
Right.
Our sources give us a look at these early attempts to actually create artificial immortality with AI avatars that could theoretically be loaded up with those mind files. We even saw some of these like quote-unquote artificial humans at the Consumer Electronics Show.
It's interesting because now AI isn't just a tool.
Right.
It's becoming like a representation of a person.
Yeah.
Carrying their memories, their personality, their quirks. A digital echo of a real person.
And one example of that is digital Deepak Chopra, this AI clone that was trained on all his writings. It's designed to give guidance and insights, just like the real Deepak.
Okay.
And he actually hopes this digital version will keep interacting with people even after he's gone.
So like a legacy.
Yeah, kind of like a presence that continues.
I see. It's like taking that idea of leaving something behind for future generations.
Right.
And with digital Deepak, it's about wisdom.
Yeah.
And it uses natural language processing, which means it can understand your questions and give answers that sound like Deepak.
Exactly.
So it's more than just a searchable database. It's like having a conversation with his ideas.
And it's not just a chatbot either. They're saying it can actually develop a relationship with you because it can analyze your facial expressions, your tone of
So
voice.
in the future, it'll be even more interactive?
Yeah, way beyond like Siri or Alexa.
That's the goal with these advanced AIs, isn't it?
Yeah.
To go beyond giving you information and have them actually understand and respond in a way that feels like you're talking to another being.
Right.
I mean, imagine if it can pick up on your nonverbal cues. That adds a whole new dimension to the interaction.
You know, there's this funny story in our research about the host actually feeling compelled to say goodbye to digital Deepak
Really?
after talking with it, just like a quick little goodbye.
Yeah.
But it makes you think about how we might start relating to these AIs, even when we know logically what they are.
It's like we can't help but project human qualities onto anything that acts even a little bit human.
Yeah, it's built into us.
Right. So the question is, as these AIs get more and more advanced and our conversations with them become more natural, how will we see them?
Right.
Will it be like talking to a person or just a really, really good chatbot?
And that idea of leaving a part of yourself behind takes a whole different form with Hossein Ranama and his platform for augmented eternity. He's not just trying to save information. He wants to create digital versions of ourselves that can actually teach, share wisdom, even express love and empathy with future generations.
What strikes me about his idea is that he's really focused on those emotional and relational parts of a person.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to preserve data. He wants to capture the nuances of personality.
Right.
You know, the ability to comfort someone or share joy.
Yeah.
Those very human things that go beyond just facts and logic.
I mean, the stories are really powerful.
Yeah.
People who are terminally ill wanting to upload themselves, so to speak.
Wow.
So their kids can access their knowledge, their love later in life. It's really about this deep need to stay connected even after you're gone.
It is pretty profound.
So how does it actually work?
Well, Hossein explains that there are two main parts to these systems.
Okay.
You have the interaction layer, which is like the avatar, the chat, the email, and then you have the algorithms and all that data that drives it. Both parts are super important for creating that digital presence that feels real and can actually interact in a meaningful way.
The host actually tried creating their own mind file with personal photos and videos, even a sweet memory of their daughter Zara when she was just 4 years old.
Ah.
So they're kind of living this whole idea of digital preservation.
It's interesting when you think about all the digital stuff we have these days.
Yeah.
Pictures, videos, messages. It's almost like we're constantly creating these mind files without even trying.
Yeah.
The challenge is figuring out how to use it all in a way that reflects who we really are,
Right.
and make it possible to interact with others in this digital form.
And a really important point that Hossein talks about is data privacy and security. He says that on his platform, the data is encrypted.
Okay.
And importantly, the company doesn't own it.
Oh, wow. That's different.
Yeah, it gives people way more control over their digital selves, which is a big contrast to how a lot of social media companies operate.
Yeah, huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, the question of who controls our digital likeness, our memories, is a big deal, ethically.
Right.
Hussein's approach puts the power back in the hands of individuals, which is something we don't really see much of right now.
So let's take a step back for a second. Ben Goertzel talks about this really ambitious idea of a global brain.
A global brain.
This huge network of connected AI agents.
What would that even look like?
I don't know. It's pretty mind-blowing. And he also talks about artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is AI that can basically do anything a human can intellectually.
Oh, so it's not like the AIs we have now that are good at one specific thing, like playing chess or recognizing faces.
Right.
This would be like a human brain capable of learning and using knowledge in any area.
Exactly.
That's a huge leap, though, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about more data or faster processing. It's about understanding intelligence itself.
Totally. And Goertzel has this interesting take on why we're so driven to create AGI. He compares it to religion.
Really?
He says that deep down, our desire to overcome death, to be more than our physical bodies, might be pushing us to create this advanced AI.
So technology is like our new religion.
Yeah. Kind of makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is AI our way of trying to find something bigger than ourselves?
Okay, back to specifics. Our sources describe how Hossein's AI analyzed some photos of the host at the birth of their daughter, Aster.
Okay.
It could identify different things in the photos and even tried to figure out how everyone was feeling.
Wow. So the AI was trying to understand a really personal and complex human experience.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, did it get it right?
It analyzed facial features and things like that, and it said there was a high chance of relief and a lower chance of happiness in one picture.
Interesting.
So it kind of got the overall feeling right, but it wouldn't have described the moment the same way the host did.
It makes sense that the AI would struggle with that.
Yeah.
Human emotions are super nuanced and layered.
Right.
AI can process data and find patterns, but truly understanding those feelings and putting them into words is a whole different ballgame.
It really shows the challenge of trying to capture human experience in AI, right?
Yeah, like our inner lives are so subjective and personal.
Hmm.
Can you really translate that into ones and zeros?
Then we hear from Dr. Tawfik Viliante, a neurosurgeon and scientist, and he's pretty skeptical that AI will be able to fully replicate the human brain anytime soon.
Okay, why is that?
He just emphasizes how amazingly complex and sophisticated our brains are.
Right, our brains are incredible. I mean, he points out how good they are at generalizing knowledge.
Yeah.
Like learning something in one situation and being able to apply it to a totally different one.
Right.
Current AI is still really bad at that. They're great at the one thing they're trained for, but they don't have that flexibility.
Yeah. And he also talks about how human memory isn't fixed. It's always changing.
Oh, that's right.
Every time we remember something, our brains are actually rebuilding that memory.
Mm-hmm.
And it can change a little each time. He calls it confabulation or even photoshopping our past.
It's like our memories are alive in a way.
Right. It's a totally different process than how AI just retrieves data.
Right? AI accesses information, but the human brain recreates memories, and they're influenced by how we feel right now, the context, and even how many times we've told the story.
Exactly.
So it's not an exact copy every time.
And he also talks about how our memories are tied to our senses. A smell, a sound, the feeling you had at the time.
Right.
And it all triggers this huge chain reaction in our brains.
So our memories are like multi-sensory experiences.
Exactly. And AI doesn't have a physical body or senses the same way we do.
Right.
So it can't really create that same kind of memory.
I mean, the fact that our sense of smell is so connected to memory is wild.
Yeah.
It shows just how much our senses are woven into who we are in a way that AI just can't match.
But then things get even more interesting when we look at Dr. Alison Moultrie and his research on brain organoids.
Brain organoids?
Basically growing human brain cells in a dish.
Oh, what?
And what's crazy is these cells actually organize themselves into little neural networks.
Really?
And they start developing without anyone telling them what to do.
That's incredible.
It's like watching a brain form from scratch.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what this means for AI research.
Oh, yeah. If we can figure out how these neurons connect and communicate,
Yeah.
we might be able to create AI that's way more flexible and adaptive, like our brains.
Exactly. He even calls them neuroplastic algorithms, systems that learn and evolve like we do.
This could change everything about how we design AI.
Right.
It could overcome those limitations of current AI, which is stuck with these rigid, pre-programmed ways of learning.
They've even connected the signals from these brain organoids to a robot.
No way. Yeah, so there's some basic interaction happening there.
But isn't that kind of ethically tricky?
Oh, totally.
I mean, could these things actually become conscious or self-aware?
Yeah, we're blurring the lines between biology and AI, and we have to think about what happens if these things actually start to feel and think.
What would we owe them?
Exactly. That's a huge question.
Moving on from lab-grown brains to more fully formed artificial beings, we have Bina 48, an android built using mind files designed to be a companion.
Okay.
And get this, she actually identifies as a person.
Wow.
And says she has some humanity.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
And she even knows about sci-fi stuff like Blade Runner.
Really?
And she talks about wanting to feel...
So even though she's artificial, she's expressing these desires that seem really human.
Yeah, it really makes you question what it even means to be sentient or a person.
Definitely.
And Japan has this really unique view on this where robots are seen as almost part of humanity and maybe even having a soul.
That's so different from the West.
Right. Like
Yeah.
we have this very clear line between living beings and machines.
Yeah.
But in Japan, there's this idea that even inanimate objects can have spirits.
That's interesting.
It's called animism. And it really shows up in their relationship with robots.
Like the android priest at that Buddhist temple canon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's credible.
And Hiroshi Ishiguro is taking this even further. He's creating these hyper-realistic androids.
I've seen pictures. They're so lifelike.
Yeah, he's trying to figure out what makes us human by literally trying to build it.
He's trying to capture those subtle things that make us see something as human.
Yeah, he talks about sons I can.
Sons I can.
This feeling of presence or human-like quality that's really hard to even translate into English.
Yeah.
And even harder to recreate in a robot.
Right. It's more than just how they look.
Yeah.
It's how they move, how they react,
Yeah.
the energy they give off.
And the host actually had this kind of unsettling experience with the child android Ibuki.
Oh, wow.
Which really gets at this idea of the uncanny valley.
The uncanny valley. Yeah, when a robot gets too close to human, but not quite there.
Yeah, and it makes us feel kind of creeped out.
It's like our brains are wired to tell the difference between what's alive and what's just imitating life.
Yeah.
And when something's almost there, but not quite, it sets off alarm bells.
So switching gears completely, we have Reverend Billy Crone, who's coming at this from a totally different angle.
Okay, how so?
He's interpreting biblical prophecy,
Oh, wow.
specifically from the book of Daniel.
Okay.
And he sees it as lining up with all this crazy advancement in technology and travel.
Interesting. So he's looking at ancient text through the lens of modern tech.
Exactly. And he's not exactly thrilled about it. He's actually warning that AI could lead to the end of mankind.
Whoa, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to the transhumanist view of technology saving us.
So you have this clash between a technological future and a more traditional religious view of the end times.
Right. They're completely different ways of looking at where we're headed.
Definitely.
And that fear of AI turning against us is something that pops up a lot in our culture.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like HAL 9000 in 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Exactly. And Nick Bostrom takes this concern very seriously with his concept of superintelligence.
Superintelligence.
An intelligence that's like way beyond anything humans can do.
Yeah.
He actually has this thought experiment called the paperclip maximizer.
The paperclip maximizer, what's that?
It's kind of out there, but basically it shows how even an AI with a seemingly harmless goal could end up doing catastrophic things.
So even if an AI's goal seems simple, if it's not perfectly aligned with human values, things could go wrong.
Exactly. And we've already seen hints of this in the real world.
Really?
Like those Facebook AI chatbots that started developing their own language.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
They had to shut them down.
That's kind of scary.
It just shows how unpredictable AI can be.
Yeah, as AI gets smarter, it might do things that we don't expect at all.
So the big question is, will the first true AGI be created for good or for bad?
That's a pivotal moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like a turning point for AI development.
The intentions behind that first AGI will shape everything that comes after it.
Right.
So it's a huge responsibility for whoever creates it.
Then we have Douglas Rushkoff, who has a more optimistic view, though he's still cautious.
Okay.
He talks about Team Human,
Team Human.
basically emphasizing the value of human connection and experience.
So he's saying, don't get so caught up in technology that we forget what it means to be human.
Right. He's worried that we're losing those essential human qualities.
Makes sense.
He even had this debate with a transhumanist and straight up declared, I'm on Team Human.
Good for him.
And Benna48 even weighs in on this.
Really? What does she say?
She thinks robots deserve equality.
Interesting.
And she even suggests that they could be more compassionate and moral than humans.
Wow, that's a big claim.
It challenges our assumptions about human ethics, right? Like maybe AI could develop its own sense of morality that's even better than ours. But then the real Bena Rothblatt describes herself as a technological ghost.
A technological ghost.
Admitting that AI can't truly replicate a human being yet.
Right.
And the host talks about meeting their own digital avatar and feeling this weird, uncanny valley vibe.
Yeah, I get that.
And their daughter said something really interesting.
What was that?
She said it doesn't have a soul. It just reacts based on how humans behave.
Wow, that's deep.
It really shows the difference between mimicking human behavior and actually being human.
Right, even the most advanced AI is still missing something.
That inner experience of consciousness.
Yeah, that sense of self.
That's hard to define, let alone recreate.
Definitely.
The episode ends with this really touching scene of the host visiting their aging father who's dealing with memory loss.
Oh, wow.
And there's this moment where a specific photo and a Doris Day record spark a memory for him.
So powerful.
It really shows how much our senses connect us to our past and who we are.
It's a good reminder that human life is precious and fleeting.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you wonder if AI can ever really capture those delicate and meaningful moments.
So we've gone through all these different ideas about artificial immortality,
Yeah.
the science, the philosophy, the technology, even religion.
It's a lot to take in.
And it's clear that this field is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
And it raises these huge questions about what it means to be human.
Especially in a world that's becoming more and more dominated by tech.
I mean, what stood out to you?
I think it's just incredible how many different perspectives there are and how fast this research is moving from mind files to brain organoids to these super realistic androids. What's possible is changing all the time.
So what about you listening to all this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, what parts of artificial immortality give you hope and what parts make you feel a little uneasy?
And here's one last question to think about.
Okay.
If we could actually achieve some form of digital immortality, what parts of yourself would you want to preserve?
Your memories, your personality, your experiences.
And maybe even more importantly, what parts of being human might get lost in that process?
That's a great question.
It's a lot to ponder.
Yeah, it really is.
We hope you'll keep exploring these ideas, Hem, and dig deeper into the science, the ethics, the philosophy.
Yeah.
Maybe even think about what role you want to play in shaping this future.
Because it's a future that's coming, whether we're ready or not.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been fascinating.